Hi everyone, my name's Amy and welcome back to my channel. I do content relating to my fentanyl addiction and also I do prison related videos as well, so please do subscribe if that's something of interest to you. I will also be filming me actually coming off of fentanyl, the whole withdrawal process, all that kind of thing. So if that's something that would be of interest to you, then please do subscribe as well. So as you can tell by the title, this is going to be a fentanyl related video, particularly dealing with my addiction and what that means for me having children, the whole process of conception to pregnancy to giving birth, and then early childhood as well, what that all means. So this is something that's really close to home. It's something that I never thought about. I never thought I wanted children when I was younger. It was something that I didn't even consider until about 2 years ago maybe. I decided that actually I really do want to have children, and it's something that I want quite soon. I mean, I'm in a stable relationship, a loving relationship, got a good job, I own my own house, and it just seems like the natural next step and something that I really want to do. But I am also an addict, and a fentanyl addict at that, so it's something that isn't going to be as simple as just having a child. So wanting to have children, there's two routes that I could basically take. There's one where I stay on fentanyl and I have a child that way, and there's obviously the route where I come off fentanyl and I go down that route. So I'm going to discuss the kind of two options that I would have and most addicts would have, especially opiate addicts. Either option I more than likely will struggle to conceive. There's not been an awful lot of studies done on fentanyl. It's not a particularly new drug, it's just come to the forefront more recently. In the past, people tended to use heroin a lot more, but I think over time people just look for something more, and they found out that fentanyl was that kind of more, if you like, and that's why fentanyl has become more in the spotlight more recently. But it isn't particularly a new drug. There just isn't as many studies on that as there is compared to heroin, for example. Some of the research that I did, some of the stuff that I know about is through looking at heroin, but obviously fentanyl is around about 50 times stronger than heroin, so there's that to bear in mind as well. Some of the effects are likely to be a lot worse. They may not be, but the likelihood is, it's a very similar drug. It comes from the same plant, has very similar effects, it has very similar side effects. They just tend to be a lot more exaggerated on fentanyl because it is that much stronger, but there isn't the study. So I just wanted to put that out as a disclaimer that this isn't for certain, but this is the likelihood. So with conception, that is likely to cause some problems. I spoke to doctors and nurses when I worked in the prison, and they told me that that is likely to be an issue from what they've seen from their own patients. Again, there's no confirmed yes it will or no it won't affect conception, but the likelihood is I will struggle whether I come off fentanyl now or I stay on fentanyl. The likelihood is that I will struggle to conceive. It's something to do with the hormones. It affects the hormones in a way that makes conception more difficult, generally speaking, and it does do that in people who take heroin as well. So the actual pregnancy itself, if I stay on fentanyl, obviously I'd have to be very closely monitored. I have to have probably a lot more scans, a lot more doctor's visits, a lot more midwife visits, just to make sure everything is as it should be. Because obviously if I'm taking a medication, I have my fentanyl, it's a patch, and I have that on me 24 hours a day, a very strong dose of that medication. So obviously some of that is going to be going into the baby. Now obviously babies can tolerate much less, they're much smaller, especially when they're growing and they're in the womb. They can tolerate much less than myself as an adult. Myself as somebody who's been taking fentanyl and opiates for many years, I can tolerate a lot more than a baby. So for that reason, there is much higher risk of miscarriage, of stillborns, of stunted growth. There's a lot of issues that surround being pregnant and being an active addict. So I'm sure many people have seen things about people who have taken heroin, for example, and gone on to have children, the likelihood is that that child is going to be born with some form of issue. They generally don't reach full term. A lot are born about 37 weeks, if not sooner. And some of them obviously do have birth defects as well. It is actually quite a small percentage. I was quite surprised actually when I did my research. The percentage is quite small. I think it's under 10%. So it is a small amount, but obviously that issue is still there and that thought is still there. And obviously being an addict, I would be very, very stressed, very, very anxious. I suffer with debilitating anxiety as it is. It's quite well controlled at the moment, but being pregnant and feeling the natural stresses that you feel of being pregnant plus of being an addict, and then putting the two together, I would feel a lot more anxious and obviously a lot more stressed, which can obviously affect the baby as well. So there is that aspect. So there's lots of things to consider. If I then, like I say, continued to take fentanyl and went on to have the baby, there is a really high chance that the baby would be born addicted to fentanyl. And what that looks like I said, they're likely to be born much earlier and they're likely to be much smaller. They're more likely to be born by C-section as well, rather than a natural birth. If a baby is born and they are addicted, the likely symptoms that they would have would be a fever, they would be sick, diarrhea, crying an awful lot, be very, very sensitive, especially sensitivity to light and sound. And this can go on for many, many weeks, but the first few days are really, really crucial. You've got to think this baby has been having this medication or this drug for 9 months and suddenly it's been taken away. I'll tell you now, if somebody took my medication away, it could almost kill me. I've done a video on how I experienced withdrawal originally, and it was absolutely awful. I was crying, I was screaming, I was hysterical, I was dizzy, I couldn't walk. So if you imagine a tiny baby that's been having this medication, the effect that that's going to have on them is awful. And obviously, unfortunately, it can end in that baby losing their life. So that is of course something that I would have to consider if I decided to take that route. The other option that of course there is me coming off of fentanyl. That has its own issues. Obviously, I've got to come off fentanyl, which is going to be really traumatic. It's something that I know I want to do, but I am putting it off because I need to be in completely the right mindset to do it. It's going to be so difficult. I had a slight preview of how that's going to feel, and that was 12 hours. So when I think back to that, it does worry me a bit. So I need to have a lot more in place to ensure that I could come off of that safely. I would then be put onto another medication. That could be methadone. That could be anything really that they could help to taper me off of fentanyl. The problem with that is, say that it was methadone, it's a very, very similar drug, and likelihood is baby may have the same issues than it would if I was on fentanyl. So it would take a lot longer, and I would have to get to a point whereby I was off of anything that could impact on the baby. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I'll be honest, I don't know if that's ever going to happen. So that does worry me. If I did go down that route and I found I couldn't come off of anything, how do I know it's not going to be too late? How do I know I've not missed my chance of having a child? So, you know, obviously that there is that to consider. The other thing to consider with that route is, obviously I take fentanyl for my back pain. I was in quite a bad car accident. So obviously if I stop taking fentanyl, I will have much worse back pain. People who are pregnant tend to get back pain anyway. So obviously mine's going to be a hell of a lot worse because I struggle without my fentanyl. I struggle to even get dressed. I struggle to wash my hair. I struggle to get out of bed even. So you can imagine being pregnant, it's going to be a real difficulty, especially towards the end when I start to get bigger. So that's something else. I don't even know if I would be able to physically carry a baby. there's that. And then of course when the baby's born, I've got to carry it around, and that I'm going to really struggle with. Obviously I've got a partner who's brilliant, but he can't be here all the time. I need to be able to know that I could care for the child. So obviously those two routes are very, very different, but there's big risks either way. No matter which way I decide to go, I've got risks. And the fact of the matter is, as I said, I don't even know that I would be able to conceive very easily. I don't know if that's an option for me. And if it is, then we've got many, many, many other barriers to get through before, you know, I have a happy, healthy baby. This is something that I really would love to do, but I've realised more recently that there's a huge possibility that I won't be able to have a baby. And that's really, really not a nice thought at all. But it's the case of many, many people who are addicts or have been addicts in the past, because there is long-term effects of having been an addict on your body. So people who are addicts, especially opiate addicts, do face a lot of that. And then of course there is all the stigma that's attached to it, and having to go through, you know, being an addict and going through pregnancy and having your baby, and especially if it is born addicted to whatever substance you were taking, you know, in my case fentanyl, going through the stigma of that and having people judging you because you took something, which in my case I didn't even know what it was. I was told by a doctor that it was morphine. It's 100 times stronger than morphine, and I was told that it was morphine. I was told it was going to be of temporary support, and it's now been 4 years, and you know, I'm well and truly in the depths of my physical addiction to fentanyl. So going through that and then still having people judge you for having this poor baby that's been born addicted to it, there's obviously the mental health effect that would have on myself and how I would feel, which of course in turn can also affect the baby as well. So like I say, there is just a lot to consider. There's a lot to consider for anybody who wants to go and have a child, but there's even more so for addicts who want to go on and have a child or are considering that, which in my situation at the moment it is just a consideration. I do get really upset quite a lot knowing that it may not be a possibility, and it's something that I really, really do want to do, but my partner is incredibly supportive and he knows that it might not be a possibility, but I'm fortunate that, you know, he'll be here no matter what. But I would really, really, really love the opportunity to grow our family, and it is just a case of I've got to just keep going to the doctors, keep trying to find options for me, and then seeing which route would suit me best and would have least risk to myself and the child. But everybody is different. I don't think it should be a case of, you know, we judge people for choosing one route or the other, because you don't know what's going on in their situation, and that may be the least harmful route for them and their child. People tell me, well, you need to get off fentanyl if you're going to have a baby. Okay, but what if my back pain is so bad that I can't physically carry that baby? What if I'm bedbound for a period of time? What if once my baby's born I can't pick it up because I've been in that much insufferable pain for such a period of time that I can't function, that I can't look after the baby? Then what? And that also leads on to, I would obviously struggle to breastfeed as well, which is something that I would really, really like to do. I'd like to have the option anyway, but if I stayed on fentanyl, or, you know, I had the baby and then I went back onto fentanyl, or another opiate that I happened to be on, you know, if I was coming off of fentanyl and I was given something else, as I said, such as methadone, I wouldn't be able to breastfeed, because obviously that would go then into the baby as well. So it's just, like I say, another thing to consider. There's so many factors to consider. And like I say, we're dealing with so much. We don't need the judgment of other people as well. Just know that anybody who's having a baby is going to go through a really, really stressful time, a lot of changes, and especially an addict who's going through that is going to struggle. Of course, then you've also got, going through labour and being offered opiates, for some people that's going to be a real massive trigger and could send them spiralling down again if they're going to start on strong painkillers again. That's another thing that needs to be considered, another thing that needs to be told to midwives, doctors, whoever is caring for you. In my case, I'll be letting everybody know. I'll be telling everybody, this is what I struggle with, this is my addiction, and just looking for support and looking for advice, and just whatever can possibly help me and my child, I'll be wanting to do. I thought I'd make this video, as like I say, it's something I've been considering a lot recently. It's something that's very personal to me, something that I've been incredibly emotional about recently, and I just hope that it might help somebody or raise some sort of awareness about this whole situation, and try and help a little bit with the stigma surrounding addiction, and also addiction with pregnancy. I really do appreciate you watching, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. Bye bye.